Daily American English. The White House press room was buzzing. Cameras clicked, reporters whispered, and live feeds blinked red with breaking banners. Then the doors opened. Karoline Leavitt stepped onto the podium, blazer sharp, jaw set, eyes steady. At just 26, she didn't look like someone who could bring down a Washington giant. But the flash drive in her hand said otherwise. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice clear and unwavering. "Today, I'm not speaking for a party. I'm speaking for the American people." The room quieted. "I have in my possession verified documents, emails, internal memos, and meeting transcripts, linking Representative Hakeem Jeffries to misappropriated federal funds earmarked for education reform." Gasps. Reporters froze mid-type. Leavitt didn't pause. These funds, over $14 million, were diverted into shell organizations tied to private political consultants. And while students begged for updated books, someone else booked private retreats. The audio feed was already being clipped and shared. Twitter exploded. At Jeffries Files, now at Karoline, stands up. One reporter stood. "Are you accusing the House Minority Leader of fraud?" Karoline nodded once. "I'm not accusing. I'm revealing." Another shouted, "Is the DOJ involved?" As of 20 minutes ago, yes, they have the files. A silence fell like a gavel drop. She closed her binder and stepped back from the mic. This isn't about left or right. This is about right and wrong. As she exited the room, chaos erupted behind her. But Karoline didn't look back. She wasn't there to win a headline. She came to break a system. And this was only the first crack. The very next morning, the Capitol Press Rotunda was flooded. Hakeem Jeffries stepped to the podium with a forced smile and a tightly knotted red tie. Behind him stood his aides, stone-faced, lips pressed shut. "Let's get something clear," he said sharply, voice echoing through the marble atrium. "This political stunt by Karoline Leavitt is a baseless attack, built on half-truths and desperation." Flashes popped. He didn't blink. "To suggest that I would exploit education funds when I've spent my career fighting for underserved schools is not only offensive, it's laughable." He paused, waiting for applause. But there was none. A reporter called out, "Have you reviewed the files she submitted to the DOJ?" Jeffries stiffened. "I have been advised not to comment on any materials that may or may not be under investigation." Another voice. "Is it true your brother's firm was listed as a consultant on 3 of the contracts?" His jaw tightened. "My family has no involvement in any illegal activity. And frankly, I'm appalled at the level of personal invasion this smear campaign is willing to stoop to." He tapped the mic once, too hard. "I have served with honor. I will not be dragged through the mud by someone who's never passed a single bill." Murmurs. One aide leaned in and whispered. Jeffries didn't wait. He walked off, shoulders high, eyes locked ahead, but his fists were clenched. Backstage, his phone lit up. A dozen missed calls, 3 donors suspended support, and 1 text from a senior party leader. Get ahead of this, or get ready. For the first time in years, Hakeem Jeffries wasn't speaking from a podium. He was speaking from a corner. By the end of the week, the internet had made its decision. Leavitt's press clip hit 40 million views. TikTok was flooded with reaction videos from veterans, teachers, and even college students reading her quotes out loud, like they were scripture. She said, "I'm not accusing, I'm revealing." That line gave me chills. Hashtags multiplied. Hashtag Karoline, new. Education, not corruption. Were Jeffries exposed? Across the country, small rallies began forming in school parking lots and city halls. In Brooklyn, Jeffries' own district, protesters stood outside his office with posters that read, "Where did the money go?" Your silence is your answer. Our kids deserved more. In an emotional live interview, a New Jersey high school principal wiped her eyes. "We begged for funding last year, books, tech, anything. If that money was rerouted for political gain, we deserve the truth." Meanwhile, Leavitt wasn't on a press tour. She was on a listening tour. Town halls in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Ohio. She took no podium, just a mic, a notebook, and a folding chair. "I didn't speak to make noise," she told a packed YMCA gym. "I spoke because someone had to. Now it's your turn." Donations to her bipartisan education ethics committee surged past $2.5 million in 48 hours. And in DC, Jeffries' team scrambled. A leaked internal email showed the subject line: "Damage control talking points. Urgent." But damage control didn't work when trust was already gone. Because this wasn't about party lines anymore. It was about a generation that felt robbed and had finally found a voice. The Justice Department released a brief statement on a quiet Thursday afternoon. An official investigation into the misuse of federal education funds has been opened. Materials submitted by Ms. Karoline Leavitt are now under legal review. That was all it took. Within hours, the House Oversight Committee announced a bipartisan ethics hearing. 3 committee members publicly requested that Jeffries temporarily step down from his leadership position to preserve institutional integrity. He refused. Then 2 of his biggest donors pulled funding. CNN aired a clip of Jeffries dodging questions outside his office, visibly rattled, eyes darting. A reporter asked bluntly, "Do you deny the signatures on those contracts?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked straight into a glass door. It went viral within the hour. His office released a statement calling the inquiry politically motivated. But even his allies weren't buying it anymore. One anonymous congresswoman was quoted, "We can't defend silence with sound bites." Behind the scenes, staffers began to resign. First his PR advisor, then his longtime chief of staff. Inside his office, the atmosphere was tense. Calls unanswered, laptops closed, lights dimmed. Jeffries sat at his desk, staring at the framed photo of his first campaign. A voice memo from his brother played over and over on loop. "You should have stopped this 2 years ago." Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt stayed silent. She didn't post. She didn't gloat. She prepared. Because this wasn't just a political scandal anymore. It was a reckoning. And the higher the title, the louder the fall. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. By 9:15, the steps of the Capitol were flooded. No music, no banners, just tension. Hakeem Jeffries stepped up to the podium alone. No aides, no tie, no defense. His voice was lower than usual, measured, tired. Public service is not about perfection. It's about responsibility. He paused. "I can no longer effectively carry out my duties as House Minority Leader. I hereby submit my resignation, effective immediately." Reporters didn't shout. They didn't have to. The silence said everything. Jeffries walked away without taking questions. His resignation letter hit the wire 6 minutes later. Karoline Leavitt was in a small New Hampshire community center when the news broke. A local teacher ran into the room, holding up her phone. "He's out," she whispered. The crowd didn't cheer. They stood, quiet, respectful. Karoline stepped forward, holding a note card she hadn't planned to read. "This isn't a victory speech, because corruption doesn't disappear with a name. It disappears with a culture." She looked up at the crowd. "What comes next is up to all of us." The clip was broadcast nationwide. Parents, students, veterans, educators, people from both parties, shared her words with a single caption. "This is what leadership sounds like." That evening, someone lit candles on the Capitol steps, not in protest, in promise. Because this wasn't just the fall of a politician, it was the rise of accountability. 6 months later, the phrase, "Transparency isn't radical, it's required," was printed on the wall of over 300 town halls nationwide. Karoline Leavitt never asked to start a movement. She just didn't step aside when one started around her. After Jeffries' resignation, she didn't run a victory lap. She ran workshops, teaching civic accountability in rural schools, speaking at bipartisan forums, sitting beside parents, not above them. The Public Ethics Reform Act, nicknamed the Leavitt Bill, passed in the House with overwhelming support, left and right. It required independent audits for federal education funds, a transparent lobbying register, and real-time public access to local school spending. CNN called it the most unifying legislation of the decade. A headline from The Atlantic read, "She didn't yell, she didn't smear, she just showed the receipts." One afternoon, at a high school in Ohio, a student stood up and asked, "Did you ever think you'd bring down someone that powerful?" Karoline smiled. "I didn't bring anyone down. I held up a mirror. The truth did the rest." Back in D.C., a plaque was placed outside the Education Committee's chambers. It read, "Accountability is not punishment, it's a promise." And in living rooms across America, young women watched Karoline speak, calm, smart, unapologetic, not as a rebel, as a reminder that you don't have to wait your turn to do the right thing. You just have to decide it matters enough to start. Papow.
If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Subscribe for more inspiring stories.